Good afternoon. My name's Ian McCrabb from Systemic Solutions. Appreciate the opportunity to present and really do look forward to questions and comments at the end. I'll try and leave a little bit of time for that. According to Microsoft, this PowerPoint template has a soothing ocean image. I kind of guess that depends on where you're positioned. If it's about to crash down on your head, maybe not so much. But it kind of seemed apropos given that I'll speak a little today about managing content migration projects, especially public sector site transformations. We've been around for 20 years and been in content services for all that time, doing content design, development and online publishing, mostly in the financial sector in Sydney. For the last decade, our focus has been on content migration and accessibility conversion in the federal government sector. And whilst over that period we've done work with any number of content management systems and continue to do some SharePoint projects, we've invested in Drupal skills and tools and methods and are hardcore about migration or assisting in migration to govCMS. Fundamentally, we do manage content migration projects from anything to anything, from simple lift and shift to large-scale redesign and rewrite. Our other service offering is the conversion of long documents to WCAG 2 compliance, usually from Word or PDF, and anything from thousands of files just to individual reports. We're an accredited govCMS partner and an active developer and contributor of content modules, one of which was recently approved, which I'll show a little bit later, for inclusion on the platform, I think called Open Access. Whilst we've strong Drupal and PHP skills, we do, however, stick to our speciality. We always partner with Drupal integrators to do the site theming and site build. So, faced with all the usual issues around initiating large projects, those of estimating costs and structuring the engagement, we've developed and are launching our govCMS workbench. This initial phase encompasses tools to estimate project scope and cost. So we've worked through different project engagement types and then worked up scoping variables and costing algorithms for site theming and site build. We've also deconstructed our content migration processes into phases in order to provide a volume and complexity-based costing model. So our current workbench provides two sets of tools. And you can see there, we have the first are for sampling and site analysis and the second are for estimating scope. You've got to analyse my site and then estimate the scope. So firstly, we sample the current site and analyse its structure, and we can generate a report. In this first release, the analysis is primarily around the complexity variables, which will then be fed into our content scoping. So what it's reporting to you on is linkages, tables, images, and other attachments. The next phase is to estimate the scope on site theming and site build. So time doesn't permit today to unpack the algorithm, but what we do provide is cost guidance on site theming based on simple, medium and complex requirements for listing pages, content types and special features. The site build is also based around simple, medium and complex requirements, but instead for customisation of content types, lists and forms. So, about the content, the final phase is to estimate the scope on content migration. And we could provide really quite accurate estimates based on the number of pages to be migrated, requirements to restructure content, supply metadata, and the level of complexity around requirements for HTML cleanup and accessibility remediation. So we can now generate an estimate broken down into theming, site build and content migration costs. And you can see there we've been able to generate an estimate And whilst it's only an estimate and we're not including hosting costs, we've tested it widely and are confident it provides potential clients with a realistic ballpark figures for different options for a move to govCMS. So our estimator reflects the categories of projects we've executed over the years. Whether they're 500 or 5,000 pages, content migration projects can usually be broken down into 3 conceptual types, each of which is a superset of the previous. So if we look at the content migration models, these engagements always involve the migration exercise, unless it really is a simple lift and shift. They generally also involve the redesign and restructure of content, and given business drivers around accessibility and empowerment of citizens, we will often also be engaged to rewrite content to plain language standards. So, taking them one at a time, the migrate service level generally encompasses a one-to-one migration of content to the new site with application of metadata, cleanup of HTML, and accessibility remediation. And these are relatively straightforward exercises with a reasonably simple content mapping exercise to extrapolate the IA. More commonly, there is a requirement to undertake a rather complex design exercise to map existing content to the new IA, and these are the ones that we generally do. This will generally involve splitting and merging pages, as well as identifying redundancy and gaps that need to be filled. As it's content, not Lego blocks, this requires consulting and design expertise to successfully transform existing content to a new architecture. These processes are necessarily consultative and iterative. So of course, once all that mapping and restructure is done, there's still the migrate service level to do. Rewriting content involves a completely parallel set of project resources and processes. Styles and standards need to be established, detailed content analysis needs to be undertaken, and a structured process of drafting, review, editing and sign-off of undertaken, whether it's a rewrite of existing or development of new content. On even a relatively small scale, this involves detailed progress tracking and specialised project management. Put all these 3 together, rewrite, redesign, restructure and migration, as we often need to, and you really do have a complex and demanding management challenge. So, leaving aside the preliminary stages of analysis and design and just focusing on the execution, one needs to synthesise 3 parallel management processes, each involving different development teams and in most cases different client engagement processes. So to undertake a rewrite, one needs to marshal writers and editors and manage an iterative process of draft, review and sign-off through client content stakeholders. Restructure review requires expert mapping consultants to interpret an often sketchily defined IA into a comprehensive migration map and socialise this change and its implications to site stakeholders, usually mediated through the web content team. Migration, on the other hand, utilises technical developers and QA specialists to undertake a tranche-by-tranche migration to the new site, navigating this through the web development team in an environment of rapid evolution of the site design. So these 3 processes almost inevitably overlap and require sophisticated coordination to harmonise the parallel tracking and mapping processes. Not surprisingly, there isn't a simple answer to any of this, but I can propose 3 principles that we've found, mostly in hindsight, to be fundamental to success. Principle number 1, with rewrite, it's critical to adhere to a disciplined and structured project methodology. With restructure and redesign, flexibility is the key. Flexibility in the mapping methodology is the key to successful synthesis of rewrite and migration. And with migration, a tranche-based approach goes a long way to resolving the competing forces of project discipline, user acceptance, and timely delivery. So, We're always about relentless process improvement. So the next phase of our govCMS workbench is about tackling some of the challenges I've just outlined. Whilst the prospect of attempting to transform rewrite projects is not even on our radar, it's not at all clear to us that this kind of conventional consulting engagement how it might even be re-engineered. We are deep in the process of transforming the way we do business around redesign, redevelopment, redesign, restructure and migration. So we've commenced detailed design of interactive mapping and automated migration for our next release of the workbench. So after many years of refining our mapping and migration processes, we're now wrapping these up with a UI that allows us to collaborate on these with the client's content teams. We're bringing out a content mapping module that will include source analysis and IA mapping, and we're providing interactive UI tools to flexibly map source pages to the new IA. Basically, we're putting our consulting processes online as a collaboration. The next part that we're automating is the migration automation. So our migration automation module will encompass processes of extraction, amelioration and deployment of pages. If I'm a little light on detail here, that's because whilst the broad architecture is secure and the services have been developed, the UI design hasn't yet been settled. What I can announce though is that in the next 2 months we'll launch a sample my site, and our initial release, which is our initial release of the migration automation tools. This will assist agencies to explore the onboarding of their site to govCMS by automating content migration to a govCMS white site. Just to change tack a little bit, one area of content migration that often gets a lot less attention than it really should is the conversion of documents to accessible format. Many government sites have nearly as many attachments as pages, and the level of WCAG 2 compliance is patchy at best. The content they contain shouldn't be construed as being less important than pages in the CMS. Often it's budget and process issues which have contributed to this content remaining as an attached PDF. We've specialised in this area for a decade and have developed quite sophisticated processes for converting documents, usually from PDF or Word to HTML or DocX. I won't focus on our automation tools, our techniques and technologies, but rather on the management issues around large-scale document conversion. So requirements to convert attachments are often surfaced late in the day and sometimes even as an afterthought in content migration. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we have tools and methods to audit and assist in a triage, which generally results in a significant proportion of redundant files being archived. So there is a way to cut a lot of the top off this. Even so, one is still generally confronted with hundreds or thousands of documents, many thousands of pages, with limited structural consistency across or sometimes even within individual documents. So the key to converting large volumes of PDF and Word to exacting WCAG standards is only partly about the conversion automation technology. It's as much about the methodology, QA and review processes, especially when one considers the requirements to restructure tables and augment with old text. Last year, we rolled up the estimation and all the workflow around our execution of conversion projects into an accessibility workbench. So this approach allows clients to self-estimate costs, engage to undertake work, and then track progress through to completion. And where this has realised most benefit is where web and content development teams have been able to pass on the responsibility for accessibility conversion back out to their business content owners. And you can see there we have the workbench includes the estimator and requesting a formal quote and then the ability to track your job. Self-estimation involves plugging in the number of pages, the format that you require, and the level of complexity based on formatting images and tables. And so you can generate your own estimate based on a HTML format required of 100 pages at a medium level of complexity. So our workflow engine drives the entire process from review of samples and alt text through to approval and delivery. This might seem reasonably trivial, but it's made the difference in terms of empowering business areas to take on responsibility for document compliance and got that off the plate of the web team. So they're able to just stick in a code and track their job through to completion. I mentioned earlier that we've contributed Drupal modules, and I'll just briefly précis these in the context of new content development. The two modules we've developed, open access and open tags, arose out of the consistent issues we've seen in the ongoing development of structured and compliant content. One can undertake a rigorous content migration process and have the site perfectly compliant on day one. However, content maintenance and development never ceases and entropy rules. Unless rigorous processes and enabling tools are in place, the site can rapidly degrade. We're only attempting to bite off a very small corner of this by introducing enabling tools to assist with the building of structured compliant content and applying structured metadata. So the first of these is open access. It's an editor plugin which encapsulates standard content templates and an in-page accessibility checker. So one accesses it from the CK editor toolbar and can select from a range of pre-packaged content templates. These include standard policies, procedures, reports, etc. The templates are just in a JSON format, so they're easily configurable. We also include a range of pre-built accessible templates, accessible tables, and an accessibility checker to let the user address non-compliance at the point of development. The second plugin addresses the issues we've encountered around support for content developers in implementing structured metadata. So our plugin Open Tags streamlines the process of applying metadata to pages. It provides default values and the capability to browse and select multiple terms from simple or hierarchical lists. Where this really comes into value is for terms that use a huge list of values, such as the tag's subject vocabulary, which is hundreds or thousands of terms long. The autocomplete and hierarchical browse functionality are really quite critical. Users can browse through a hierarchical list of tags and easily drop those in. So I'm not sure if I've made you any of you feel any less anxious about the challenges inherent in content migration projects, whether they're large or small. I'm not sure if the picture now seems any more like a soothing ocean image, or whether it's like a wall of water about to crash down on you. But I can just summarise in just a couple of points. What have we learned after 20 years in content services and a decade in government content migration? Probably two principles. I guess the first principle would be the balance one needs to strike in the interplay between disciplined structured consulting methodology, disciplined structured consulting engagements, and flexible enabling methodologies. And the second might be the balance one needs to strike between automation and conventional QA processes to achieve excellent quality outcomes. So I've left a couple of minutes there. Appreciate your attention. And if you've got any questions, happy to take a couple of minutes before we break for afternoon tea. Great, yeah, thanks. How have we found the process of contributing to govCMS? It's a bit of a loaded question. You can be frank. It's not been great. Not been great. There doesn't seem like it seems like an area that the govCMS team might want to think about an engagement process over. Of course, we know you guys. We're big kids. We don't expect to be spoon-fed. We're vendors. We're not, we don't expect anything. Yeah. So if we've got a module we think should be on the govCMS platform, we're going to call you. We're going to send you emails. We're going to make it happen. Having said that, we did have to call you. We did have to send emails and quite a few to make it happen. Yeah. So yeah, it might be something that the govCMS team can have a look about around the engagement on. At the moment, it seems very one-to-one. I'm not sure whether there's a way to let people. I'm making this up as I go along, but maybe there's a way to let people to host plugins and get some feedback. I just open it up a little bit. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, look, everybody, thanks for your patience. I know I've gone over into afternoon tea time, so thanks a lot. Thanks very much.